Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now, this last couple of weeks, I've been, like every day, there's been just another article, another news story, something like that, just popping up on social media or on my YouTube feed about Professor Jordan Peterson. Now, I've looked at some of his work, some of his statements and things like that in the past. I've quoted him because he is a professor of psychology with a substantial period of experience behind him, and yet, obviously, due to certain groups taking umbrage with the way that he has presented information, even if it seems very black and white in a lot of ways. I've in fact covered an interview with him in a prior video that was done on Channel 4, and so on, where he was being very, very straightforward, but the interviewer decided that she wanted to try and attack him in one way or another. But there's one thing that stands out that a lot of people have been picking up on in various articles and things, and that is that his book, The 12 Rules for Life, is out there and it's gained a lot of attention. And a lot of these people don't seem to have read the book. I haven't personally read the book. It's on my list of books to eventually read, when I get round to it. But I went online, I found a list of the 12 rules, and just with a completely blank slate of what is actually said in the book, I wanted to appraise the rules, because that's what the core of the book is, right? The rules, those specific points at the beginning of each chapter that are directives by which you should live by. Otherwise, what would be the point in writing the book? And as it's something that these articles have been complaining about and worrying about and upset over, just the attention to this person's book, I wanted to actually go through the reasons, or not the reasons, the rules that he's I can't speak today, that he's listed, so that we can see whether or not they are as bad as are suggested, or if whether they come from someone that you disagree with on other things. The rules may very well still make sense and be worthwhile kind of following up on. Now, we'll go through just from 1 all the way to 12, and we'll just comment. I'll comment on each one as we go, give it a little appraisal, and obviously I'd love to see your comments and your thoughts down in the comments section below. But let's get into it. So the first one is stand up straight with your shoulders back. Now, this is something I was told as a kid, something that lots of people are told as a kid. It's something that makes sense. Firstly, good posture is just good for you. But also, secondly, you standing up tall and being proud. And I can't really do that so much here because my head pops out the top of the screen. But with all of that taken into account, we've talked about embodied cognition before. We've talked about the way that your body feels and the way that you use your body informs the way that you emotionally feel and that you think. And so as a result, stand up straight, shoulders back, chest out, stomach in, hold your head tall. All of those things are worthwhile. They're going to give you that potential, or at least in theory, potentially give you that sense of confidence and kind of stability in the way that you're stood, strength in yourself in the way that you're stood, because your body informs the way you think, which informs the way your body works, which informs the way you think, and so on and so forth. So that just makes sense, right? Number 2 is treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. And now this is something that I've talked about in other videos when we've been talking about solving problems, because one of the questions that I will ask clients a lot of the time is, okay, so now we're not thinking about you anymore. Your best friend has this problem. And I will spell out the problem that my client has been having. Your best friend has this problem. So what advice would you give that friend? And they will usually give much better advice than they've been giving themselves. In which case, treat yourself as an abstract, so that you can give advice to that abstract that then you can take advantage of. That makes, again, perfect sense. You are responsible for yourself. You are responsible for helping yourself. You are responsible for getting yourself from point A to point B and doing all the hard work and all the other things that you need to do along the way. Sometimes it's crazy difficult. Sometimes you will get support. Other times you will not get support. But there's no one else that's responsible for doing it other than you. In which case, creating that abstract so that you can give the advice, give the help, and then use what you have thrown out into the ether, that kind of non-entity form of yourself, you can then take back on board and use for yourself after you've actually made it something that you can manipulate. So that, again, makes perfect sense. Number 3, make friends with people who want the best for you. I mean, isn't this what is said time and time again by all those individuals who say, oh, lose all the toxic people from your life? You know, all of the individuals who say that they don't have time for crappy behavior, they don't have time for crappy environments that they need to operate in. Well, yeah, that's just what's being said here. You know, make friends with people who want the best for you. Sometimes it can be hard to tell, but then you learn from that for the next time. That's how friendships work. Number 4 is compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not who someone else is today. Again, I've said this in other videos, yeah, in regards to minimizing stress and anxiety, in regards to working for progress. I've gone through how you can operate on this kind of level where you are different from everybody else, and you have been your entire life. Even if you've got an identical twin who is very, very identical, you are still going to be different people doing different things, operating in different ways, perceiving the universe from different perspectives, in which case there is no one else to compare yourself to other than the person that you were yesterday. Track your own progress, your own development, rather than trying to match yourself off against someone else and see how well you compare. It'll never work out well. Again, that makes perfect sense, though. So far, we're not coming into anything that's offensive or upsetting, right? So what's the next thing? The next thing is, do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Now, I can understand where there will be a lot of people who potentially come back against this one with like, oh, well, you know, you shouldn't be letting your kid do anything. You shouldn't be doing, you know, you shouldn't be limiting them in such significant ways. But let's think about this for a second. If you're a parent and you have a child, then you're responsible for that child's development up to a certain point, i.e. adulthood. Or at the very least, the point at which they can become their own legal guardian. In which case, if you let your child do something that makes you dislike them, how many other people are you allowing your child to kind of prompt them to dislike them? Yeah? It's a case of going, you're there responsible for their upbringing, you're there responsible for their care, in which case, if they start doing stuff that makes you dislike them, and you let them do it, then they're going to continue to do it. And as a result of continuing to do it, then they may very well isolate themselves, ostracize themselves. And you're there to care for that child. Not just physically, not just economically, but mentally and emotionally as well. In which case, why would you allow that child to continue to do those things that would set them apart, to cause them problems? It's your responsibility to do that, and the way that you do that might seem quite harsh on the child, providing consequences for the things that they do. Positive and negative reinforcement, depending on what the situation is. Some of those things could be very harsh. I'm not talking about beating kids, I'm not talking about doing anything terrible to them, but what I am saying is consequences, responsibility, the worth and value of things like money, of people, of other people, you know, respect of other people and their belongings and things like that. All of those things impressed upon a child and maintained in a consistent fashion are going to help them in the long run. So yeah, should you let your child or children do anything that makes you dislike them? No, because if you are letting them do things that make you dislike them, then they're probably going to make other people or put other people in a position of not liking them as well, and that is only ever going to make the kid's life harder. So don't let them do it. Now, it can be difficult if you are, as many of Professor Jordan Peterson's um, detractors are, ideologically polarized. It can be very difficult to shrug that off and work within a more mainstream, middle of the road kind of mindset to ensure that your kid has the best overall development. But again, if you're working in a situation and you have an environment that you and your child are in, then fine. You should be trying to raise them as well as you possibly can. But this is a good piece of advice. Don't let them do things that make you dislike them. Because if you're resenting them, if you're disliking them, then and you're the one that's supposed to be unconditionally loving them, then imagine how badly other people will treat them off those same interactions. Number 6, set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. I mean, yeah, I can see how that is. Like, there are some things that you can just observe, yeah, statistical evidence for it, or something that is just fact because it's happened. And those observations aren't necessarily criticisms, they're just going to be facts. For instance, some of the stuff that I have pointed out in regards to certain political movements, certain things that have come out of studies and things like that, where there is a supporting evidence for it, and it's a case of going, yeah, okay, so I'm observing this as something to take into consideration. Not necessarily a criticism so much as a recognition of a negative point. But for the purposes of this, because this is again focused on individual lives, because it's rules for life, it's a case of going, you shouldn't be judging other people and criticizing other people and the world around you before you've found yourself kind of perfect. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone and all that jazz. And that's not bad advice, because the less you judge people, the less judgmental you are, the less negative you are, the less either incredibly psychotic or incredibly neurotic you are, the better, right? Keeping that balance, keep open mind, but not one that allows your mind to fall out your head. All of those things, it's important. So this makes sense. What's the next one? Number 7, pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. Yeah, again, nothing that was worth doing was ever easy, so it all kind of cascades in that. Work hard first and work smart first, and then you can, live off that and develop off that later on with less effort. Pursuing what is meaningful over what's expedient. Like, you don't necessarily want to just chase the first job that comes along with the best paycheck. Sometimes you'll have to, but you don't necessarily want to. You want to be able to see where you would fit best, what has the most meaning to you, what you can follow through with in the best possible way for yourself. And because that way, again, this being rules for life, that will allow you that greater chance of long-term happiness, of long-term betterment, rather than a quick explosion of, yeah, that was good, followed by misery afterwards. Again, stuff that seems fairly straightforward. Number 8, tell the truth, or at least don't tell lies. I mean, that's fairly straightforward, right? I mean, the one thing that I would say is sometimes omission of information is tantamount to lying. So I would just have summed that up as just tell the truth. Which again, sometimes is hard, sometimes isn't a pleasant experience for the people being told or for the person telling. But it's a case of, yeah, it's still something that that's worth listening to. Yeah, you shouldn't just be misleading people or telling lies to one extent or another. There should be, at the very least, something that has an element of truth to it in terms of the don't lie part to it, even if you're not disclosing all of the information. So yeah, again, this makes sense. Number 9, assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't. Now, I feel like this is an interesting one and a good one in the world in which we live, because we've got a lot of people who are very opinionated, and they will often, as we've seen, inoculate themselves either through someone allowing themselves to be inoculated by a third party or them doing it to themselves. They will inoculate themselves from other attitudes, other thoughts, other ideas. They will choose that their way is the right way, and that's it. This is as a result of a lack of empathy in many ways, or potentially too much empathy. And as a result, it causes all manner of problems, all manner of arguments, divisions, and all sorts. The whole mansplaining thing, where it's if a person, any person, male or female, is coming to talk to you and explain something to you, then there's a good chance that they actually care about explaining it to you. And as a result, you shouldn't just shut them down. The biggest problem, though, is that when that person is doing it and expecting validation for doing it, and that's a slightly different matter, which isn't actually covered in any of this, I don't really think. Not seeking. I mean, the closest thing to not seeking validation would be comparing yourself to who you were yesterday, not anything else. But hey. But yeah, like if someone's coming to talk to you and they are coming to explain to you and they are trying to be pleasant about it, then let them speak. When someone comes and talks to me, if it's something that I know what they're going to say because it's literally something that I've just read or something that I was told by our boss or our teacher, and then they've come to relay it to me because they don't know if I know or not yet, then I say thanks, but I already know because so-and-so told me. Yeah? But otherwise, if it's just random information, I'll let them finish. And after I've let them finished, I can briefly appraise what they've said, and then I can respond. If someone's explaining something to you, let them do it. There might be something, just a nugget, just a little thing in there for you to learn. So again, that makes perfect sense. Number 10, be precise in your speech. Now this is difficult because we're imperfect beings, and a lot of the time we are imprecise in what we do regardless of how hard we try. And so being precise in your speech, being exacting, can be difficult, especially when you're talking on the fly. I know from the comments that some of you guys have left that sometimes when I've used a colloquialism or something that to me is a colloquialism that I felt was, at the very least, still on topic, you guys have taken it in a different way. And so as a result, it is something that is difficult to do at times, but it's something that's worth aiming for and trying for. And so it's a case of maybe slowing down your speech, taking a moment to think about what you want to say, and then saying it rather than just flying off the handle, instantly responding. Number 11. Now we get into these last two, and they're a bit odd compared to some of the rest, but I feel like there's a good point behind these two in looking at them if you read into them a little bit. So the first one is number 11, which is do not bother children when they are skateboarding. And now I can think of a few reasons for this. Firstly, if you bother a kid when they're skateboarding, there's firstly a good chance that they will hurt themselves because they will not be paying attention anymore. Or be in a hazardous situation where they could be hurt by someone else. Secondly, you don't really want to go up and just randomly bother a child when they're doing something that's a recreational activity, because potentially other people looking on will get the wrong impression of why you're approaching that child. But also, if the kid's there and they're doing something that they are engaged with, that they are having fun with, and it's something that potentially helping them stay fit, it's something that they are just getting on with, they're not as long as they're not in anyone else's way or potentially harming anyone or anything like that, and they're being safe, then why stop them? Let those people develop and grow and maintain themselves and have fun the way that they want to. But I have a feeling that this is more a case of going and considering the impact that you can have on people as you interact with them, rather than not. It's going to be interesting when I actually read the book. Maybe I'll do another video when I've actually read the book, and I'll come back to you guys and we can go through these and see whether my interpretation of just the rules by themselves matches up with what's in the book. But then 12, pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. Now, I feel like this has two parts to it. The first one is if you're willing to show kindness and so on to just a random animal, then firstly, that's an element of empathy and compassion and appreciation of creatures around you, that if you're willing to acknowledge a cat, then surely you're willing to also acknowledge the people around you, right? But the other part of that is, well, cats are everywhere. You know, they climb all over the place and they do whatever, and they are somewhat ever present wherever you end up walking through. And it's a case of going, well, yeah, pay attention to your environment so that when you encounter one, you know that it's even there. I feel like there's that two parts to that, where it's a case of just general outward appreciation and compassion for the living creatures within your environment as you pass, because why not? That's a good thing, right? That's a good, reasonable thing to take on board. But then on top of that, it's a case of going, well, you need to be aware of your surroundings to even hope to impart that compassion, that appreciation in the first place. And so it's something that all kind of adds up to just appreciate your surroundings and the things that are in it, or in them, I suppose. But anyway, those are the 12 rules that Jordan Peterson has put in his 12 Rules for Life, the book. And as I said, I've not read the book. That was just a straight cold read of the rules themselves to see if they made sense and see if all of these people who have been riling against his rules and against the book are have any real leg to stand on. And I can see how some of these could be not necessarily misinterpreted, but applied to situations in a way that would make them seem bad. But otherwise, they all seem fairly straightforward, at least a glance like this, with a quick think about what each one is. So they don't seem unreasonable. They, in fact, line up an awful lot with the stuff that I do as a coach with people. So I can't say that they're bad or anything like that. In fact, I would say that these are a pretty good rule set, to be fair. But I'd love to know what you guys think. Have you actually read the book? And how much did I get right? And otherwise, guys, I hope you found this interesting, to say the very least, considering that Professor Jordan Peterson is something of an interesting figure at the moment. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the video later. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video and found it interesting, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care.